Good evening, everyone. On behalf of High Point Treatment Center and the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative, I want to welcome you to the 2023 Annual Overdose Vigil by Candlelight. My name is Mackenzie Latham, and I'm a Prevention Coordinator with High Point. I want to begin by thanking you all for being here to honor the lives we have lost to the disease of addiction. We would like to thank all of the prevention team for their tireless efforts planning tonight's vigil. A special thank you to Massasoit Community College and its incredible team who have partnered to host tonight's event. The Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative is made up of 5 community coalitions who are all represented here tonight. We would like to thank the volunteers who make up Bridging Lives, the Brockton Mayor's Opioid Overdose Prevention Coalition, EB Hope, Rockland Cares, and Whitman Hanson Will. It is because of all of your time, love, and effort that we continue to see positive change in our region. Thank you to all of the service providers that are here as part of our resource fair, and for your ongoing support and commitment to the work we all do. We would like to acknowledge the elected officials who are here tonight: State Senator Michael Brady, State Representative Josh Cutler, State Representative Michelle Dubois, and State Senator Walter Timilty. Before we begin our program tonight, we'd like to inform you that the bathrooms are located inside the Student Center behind you. The event will be recorded by Brockton Cable Access, and WMEX 1510 AM will be broadcasting live. Tonight, we will have the opportunity to hear stories of loss, hope, and recovery. There will also be healing musical performances by Vicki Lynch and Carlos V. Ramos, as well as a memorial slideshow honoring our loved ones. This event is very special to me, both personally and professionally. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to continue to do this work in our loved ones' names.
Hi, my name is Amanda Sandoval. I am the Director of Communication and Prevention Services for High Point Treatment Center and the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative. It's an honor to stand here before you tonight at our annual Overdose Vigil. Tonight is the 12th vigil that I've had the privilege of helping to plan and be a part of, and the 16th vigil that we've hosted as an organization. Despite us planning these vigils for over a decade, I continue to dwell on what to say tonight, feeling as though none of it sounded like the right thing. The truth is, there aren't any right words. Although grief becomes this indescribable, universal experience, the way in which grief manifests itself is going to be very unique for each of us. So whether this is your first vigil or you've been joining us since the very first vigil in 2008, we recognize that the time lapsing doesn't take away your pain. We acknowledge that your grief is yours, and that wherever you are in your grief, we want you to know that this vigil is a safe place to land. This vigil stands as a reminder that the opposite of addiction is connection. Although as a group we all have many differences in our story, we're bound together to honor our person, our people, and to support one another through this process. In 2023, our world is unfortunately up against the rise in substance misuse, addiction, and overdose. Tonight, we will honor 438 of the individuals that our local communities have lost in our memorial slideshow. It's important to remember that the numbers you see and hear about each day represent a life, a person, their dreams, their struggles, their worth. Unfortunately, the battle against stigma, the challenges of access to treatment, and the ongoing loss of lives remain stark realities we must continue to overcome. To me, the vigil represents a glimmer in a time of darkness. When discussing grief and sadness, my friend Kelly once beautifully defined a glimmer as a tiny moment that sparks joy, even in the midst of challenges. Tonight, I hope that you can leave here with a glimmer of hope that this community provides, and a reminder that light allows you to find a point of focus in the darkness. When we end our program tonight by candlelight, I encourage you to look at the candle lit in your hands and let the light symbolize the memory of someone you have lost, the light you are trying to find within yourself, the healing that you've been longing for, or the darkness you've been trying to break apart. In a world often full of darkness, together we're able to be the light that that provides a safe place of comfort in uncertain surroundings. For those who have suffered loss, we can hardly imagine the depths of your pain, the caverns of darkness you've navigated. Over the past 12 years, this event has consistently been a glimmer of hope for me, and I hope that you can carry that glimmer into your own darkness. In closing, remember that you're not alone in your grief. Whether your loss is recent or years have passed, your pain is valid, your grief is legitimate, and this space is a safe haven for all of those feelings. You might feel a turbulence of emotions, but this community stands with you. Your presence here is significant, your loved ones matter, and we carry their light within us. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for sharing your space with me tonight. My name is Allison Pinkover, and I have been a member of the Brockton Mayor's Opioid Overdose Prevention Coalition for many years through my work as the Director of Substance Use Services at Brockton Neighborhood Health Center. For those of you who do not know the health center well, BNHC is a community health center in downtown Brockton. Our work is grounded in the value of health as a human right and centers our patients and community as the driving forces behind the care we provide. In addition to the many medical and behavioral health services BNHC offers, our Substance Use Services Department works both passionately and compassionately to provide support to people in every stage of their readiness to change. Since 2001, our department has provided medical care from a small clinic located inside of Father Bill's and Mainspring Shelter to meet the needs of those experiencing homelessness in downtown Brockton. In 2015, our services expanded to include an office-based addiction treatment program called the Harm Reduction Clinic, which now serves more than 400 patients per year with programming in English, Spanish, Cape Verdean, and Haitian Creole. We are proud to offer services beyond that of a traditional OBAT program by providing treatment for stimulant use alongside clinical care for those struggling with opioid and alcohol use. Then, in 2018, after identifying the need for services specifically tailored for pregnant and postpartum women, BNHC launched Moms Do Care. Moms Do Care supports the pregnancy and parenting journeys of those struggling with substance use. Through the work of peer moms in recovery and specialty-trained staff in OBGYN, the program works to eliminate the stigma associated with pregnancy and substance use disorder and meet the unique needs of people navigating new parenthood and recovery. Finally, 2 years ago this week, with the help and collaboration of many familiar faces here, we launched our Community Care in Reach mobile addiction program to provide walk-in medical, harm reduction, and treatment services on demand throughout Brockton. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing someone who, like the health center, has deep roots in Brockton. Nan Garland Trenholm, a self-proclaimed Montello girl, was born and raised in Brockton. She is now a small business owner in neighboring Abington and is an active supporter of numerous peer-led community resources in the greater Brockton area. Tonight, Nan is bestowing upon us the privilege of hearing her story. As a woman approaching her 6th year in recovery, she also grieves as a mother who has lost a son, Stevie, to overdose. Tonight, however challenging, Nan courageously chooses to recover out loud. At a time where stigma still threatens our families, friends, neighbors, and communities, Nan and I agree that we can't stay silent. It's not an option. Bravely and graciously telling her story, please welcome Nan Garland Trenholm.
Get my glasses on. Good evening. I'm Nan. Pardon me. We're here tonight to honor the lives of these young lives, someone's brother, sister, aunt, uncle, daughter. Sorry. I'll be all right. and someone's child. I remember my very first vigil I attended was right here in 2015. I was brought here by my outreach worker from High Point. And it's like Christmas every year because I only see him once a year, and it's always here each year. Thank you. And he has a great name, Stephen. Even though I was still in active addiction, I remember hearing a message that I could get my life back if only I surrendered to my disease. I believe a seed was replanted that day. It took a couple more years, but here I am. I stand before you, free from all mind-altering substances today. I believe that I was born with a genetic predisposition to this disease, and there were environmental factors just awaiting the strike of a match, so to speak. I started experimenting with a little weed, a little alcohol, cigarettes, about 12 years old. At age 14, I was severely traumatized by two men. I remember feeling like I was worthless and that I had no value, and I hated my life. I hated being me. And when I got into recovery, I started peeling away those layers and realized that grossness followed me throughout my life. And I self-medicated, trying to get away from those feelings. After that happened, that's when I crossed that invisible line that they talk about, trying to numb my feelings. My parents were beside themselves. They didn't know how to help me as parents of a young girl who had been so traumatized. I became so rebellious, so I was out of control. They had to go to the courts and took out a Chin's petition, and I became a ward of the state. I went to a foster home, group homes, and finally to an all-girls residential for almost 2 years. That's where I was first introduced to AA. I was in my first detox at 15, 16 years of age. I stayed sober for a while, but I was miserable, and because I didn't know how to treat my underlying emotional issues. I started drinking again around 19 years old, and I was a blackout drinker, and I made a complete mess out of myself when I drank and embarrassed my family. And I was then introduced to cocaine, and I used it throughout my mid-80s to the early 90s. I entered the Fellowship of Recovery in the Quincy area in 1993, and I started rebuilding my life. I got divorced in early recovery back then, and I had 3 young children at the time. I started my own business, painting and wallpapering, and we had a beautiful home and many material things, Bear with me, please. Money started becoming more important than my meeting attendance as I earned more and more of it. I was allowing the gifts I got from recovery edge me away from my meetings. I remember hearing someone from the podium telling this story about his addiction to heroin, and I didn't want to hear it. I put blinders on and blocked my ears, and I said to the man next to me, I can't stand hearing about that. Ugh, I was literally cringing, and I was comparing and not identifying with the speaker. Because after all, a drug is a drug is a drug, and alcohol is a drug as well. The man next to me said, "That's a yet." I exclaimed, "Oh no, not me. I know me well. I'll never do that." I wish I had just been more open-minded to listen and not make such judgment. Around my 7th or 8th year of recovery, I ended up having a life-saving operation, and I was sent home with an endless supply of OxyContin. And then the oxycodone came along, and fentanyl patches, and were to follow. I became completely addicted within months of taking the OxyContin. I needed more and more, and there was never enough. About 1.5 years into my relapse, I call it, I eventually turned into a heroin addiction. I became unrecognizable to everyone and even to myself. My relapse lasted 17 years and 11 months. That's how long they prescribed them, and I was quite the actress. And I own that, I had multiple overdoses, psych wards, detoxes. My life was a complete utter mess, disaster, and I didn't know how to get out of the darkness, or the bowels of hell, as I call it. The last year out there in active addiction, my son Stevie had gone to jail as a direct result of his addiction. My mother had passed away from brain cancer in February 2017, and I remember feeling like I had nobody left to save me if I needed, or if I got in a jam. My disease had alienated me from all my friends and family. I was alone for the first time in my life, just utterly alone. You see, my mother never gave up on me. She brought me to detoxes, meetings, etc. She was my lifeline. And I was completely and utterly alone. At this point, I was resolved to the fact that I would just be in active addiction for the rest of my life. I felt I had no options. I'd just die that way, period. By Thanksgiving of 2017, my oldest child had relapsed and got a call from St. Elizabeth's. I arrived at the hospital. A team of doctors surrounded me and said, "Most people don't survive this unless her youth will help her." You see, she had become septic after relapse, and she had become septic throughout her whole system. 2 collapsed lungs, pneumonia, MRSA in her right leg. She was on life support in a coma, and they had to medically paralyze her. I remember kneeling next to that ICU bed, begging God to save her. I asked God, help me get out of my addiction, but I didn't know how to. Please, God, please help me, I said. About a week or so later, God answered my prayers. God has jokes. My sister, who worked at the Brockton Police Department, found my drugs. And I screamed at her, this isn't funny. "Give them back. You don't understand. I need them." And I guess I terrified her. Later, she said, that was the first time I had really heard myself admit out loud that I was powerless and needed help. I promised my sister that I'd get help as soon as my daughter gets better. And thank God she did. And during this time, my sister would check the police log each day to see if they had taken my body out of my apartment. I was so self-centered, I didn't think anybody cared, like I said earlier. We think that we don't affect the ones who love us most, but we do. On January 4th of 2018, I overdosed in my apartment. And it was different this time. It scared the hell out of me. I started detoxing at home for about 4 days, and it was agonizing hell. My sister came by my apartment and found me in bad shape. And she gave me options. I'll section you. Either you go willingly or I'm going to section you. I agreed to go to treatment. So she brought me to the Brockton PD, in which they contacted the Champion Plan. Through them, I went to detox. And I extended my stay at detox and went to further treatment. When I got home, I started planning my days around a meeting. I told people I was new. I got a routine of meetings down. I knew where I was going each day. I got a sponsor, joined a group, got involved in the literature meetings. I've built up my foundation ever since I left detox in 2018. I have an enormous support system of men and women, young and old, in both fellowships today. My life has completely turned around. I actually worked in the recovery field, left last year, and I partook in the Recovery Coach Academy also last year. I got married 3 years ago to a man I met in the halls in recovery in 1994, my sweetheart. I actually had the honor of presenting my husband with his 30-year medallion in May of this year. This time around, my life revolves around my recovery. I'm nervous, sorry. I have many gifts of recovery, but I keep it up front to remember to not allow those gifts of recovery take me away from my recovery again. So I stay very close and connected. My husband and I own a small business, and I have so much gratitude for everything that my higher power has bestowed upon us. And I don't take it for granted today. Nothing. I don't take anything for granted. I really do have a blessed life. My beautiful life, as I knew it, sorry, I'm going to keep it together, was abruptly changed on March 22nd, 23, when we got a call from the hospital that my 38-year-old son Stevie was in rough shape. And they said we had to get there. I arrived there and was greeted by 2 social workers, a doctor, and security nearby. We were taken into a private room where I heard the most devastating words. "I'm sorry, but we couldn't save him." I still don't remember everything as my brain and body just froze. His father was in tears. We were brought to the trauma unit to see my beautiful son, my Stevie. And he still had the tube from the intubation in his mouth. His beautiful blue eyes were slightly open. My CV was gone. I guess I fell on the floor off the chair. And I don't even remember it. And his father had to lift me. You see, Stevie had struggled with addiction, substance use disorder for years. He also had bipolar disorder and PTSD. Mental health issues run hand in hand alongside with this disease of addiction. As I had mentioned earlier, he had been incarcerated in late 2016 as a direct result of his addiction. While incarcerated, he stayed clean for over 3.5 years. He became a recognized Buddhist. He studied Buddhism for over 3 years. He was so healthy and happy. I'd visit him like clockwork every Monday. He and I shared so much together, so much healing. We spoke about recovery. We had so much laughter. It was so funny. Oh, that laughter, those jokes and everything keeps me stable most days when I remember it all. My goodness, he was so funny, and we shared some tears. Then the pandemic came. I wasn't able to visit, barely any phone calls or emails or anything. All these men were so cut off to the world. He was in a single cell and 23 hours a day, and that was for 9 months. And it's like inhumane. And then they started offering methadone or Suboxone. And I warned him, don't take that methadone, no good can come from it. You've been clean all this time. No H&Is, no outside groups going in, no recovery. And if you're in recovery, you know that you need to hear the message always, you know. He got off the methadone a few weeks before being released to a program in May of 22. He went to a halfway house and different sober houses. He had some struggles adjusting to life outside. He was eventually prescribed medically assisted treatment, Suboxone. He was going to meetings and working, and he was doing so well. He was so happy and proud of himself, and I finally felt a sense of relief that he's going to be okay. He's got it this time. I could finally breathe again. I could finally sleep at night. In March of this year, he decided to come off the Suboxone, and he went to detox to come off of them. He felt that people were judging him, saying you're not clean and sober if you're on Met. He got out of detox on March 21st, and we spoke for about an hour that evening. And he said he was in Boston, felt he had a better chance to find the resources to get into another halfway house, as the detox couldn't find any. The pandemic affected funding for these programs, and they were literally cut in half as far as availability. Also, a lot of programs closed completely. We said our I love yous and good night, and he said that he would call me in the morning. Stevie called me as promised at 6:40 a.m. the next morning. He told me how he didn't feel well and proceeded to tell me about the plans he had for the day. I said, keep me posted, and if you need anything, need any help with anything, just call me. Thanks, Ma, I will. I said to him, no matter what, Stevie, don't pick up. I know, Ma, I won't. I love you, Ma. I love you too, sweetheart, I said. 2 hours after we hung up the phone, they pronounced him deceased at 8:44 a.m. My incredibly amazing, blessed life as I once knew was completely shattered. The truly happy, grateful, and excited to seize the day kind of woman is no longer, and I don't know if she'll ever return. My heart has been crushed, and I'm so exhausted from my emotions. The 5 stages of grief they talk about, I cycle through them each day. I'm not okay. I put on a mask, my brave face, I call it each day, shower and go to work. The visions of his beautiful face, how gray he was, and how very cold his face was. As I kissed him, it's embedded in my mind's eye forever. I remember smelling, sorry. I remember smelling my son for that last time. That scent of a child only a mother can identify with. All that I can do is smell his t-shirts and clothing now. This disease makes us think we aren't loved or lovable, It wants us isolated and alone so it can talk negatively to us constantly and make us crave more. More is never enough. It tells us just a little more and we'll be okay. We'll feel a little better. It's a lie. When you lose a child from this disease as a parent, I experience the guilt of wondering if I did enough. I get the should've, could've, would've, Physically, it affects me. People don't know what to say to us. Sometimes they just avoid us. Because I don't blame them. What do you say to a mother? What helps us is you wanting to just hang out or send me a heart emoji or a prayer emoji. I feel so confident just knowing that somebody's thinking of me. Like, that just brings me so much joy. Sometimes the best thing is not saying anything at all and just offering a hug. I so understand the awkward silence. I do. I know it's difficult for others to see me in this position. And I acknowledge that. I see you. I hear you without you saying anything at all. And I appreciate that. I want to hear Stevie's name. I want to hear all the wonderful stories about him. I want to hear the funny ones, especially because it makes my day go by a little easier. Every conversation, I can't help but interject Stevie's name into it. Please try to understand it's part of this process of grief, they say. Please allow me to just have a voice, lend an ear. I'm not asking anyone to fix me. I'm unfixable. To know the true Stevie, he was much more than the ink on his arrest sheet. He had a brilliant mind. He had this huge thirst for knowledge, and we had this running joke about his running tab at Barnes & Noble. At age 17, he enrolled himself in college. He had a huge heart, and it was handsomer as his face was. He was a loyal friend, a protector of others, and especially for the less fortunate. He was actually quite humble. A great thinker, quite philosophical, really. An inventor, my goodness. I have notebooks and letters of all kinds of ideas and brilliance and numbers and figures, and I don't know anything about that stuff. But he was amazing. And I remember my sister Caroline, when she had cancer. He had prayed, and these are his beads, his mantras. He would pray mantras for 1 or 2 full days for her to beat that cancer. And she did, thank you, God. He was hysterically comedic and quick-witted. To know my relationship with my son was to witness the most beautiful love and friendship between a mom and her son. He called me every day, emails, texts, cards, and letters. Honestly, we were the best of friends. So many of his friends have expressed how much love he had for me and how proud he was of me in my recovery. And he was like one of my biggest supporters. He cheered me on. In closing, I stand here sharing my experience, strength, and hopefully some hope that no matter what, I don't have to pick up over anything that life throws at me, and you don't either. I attribute that to building a strong foundation and relationship with my higher power from early on in my recovery. I never wanted to be on this side of the microphone speaking about the loss of my child, but here I am, and as uncomfortable as it is, oh well, I say, because my silence won't help anyone. We must recover out loud. We must speak louder about our painful losses. Because by myself I can't, but together we can bring more awareness to this disease of addiction and to this overdose epidemic. No matter what, don't pick up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nan. Good evening. My name is Colby Myers, and I am a prevention coordinator at High Point Treatment Center. It is my honor to introduce Paula Hendricks to share her story. Paula has been profoundly impacted by substance use disorder, both personally and professionally. It's been a privilege to work alongside Paula at High Point, who has been serving as an advocate for families for over 17 years. Please welcome Paula.
Hi. I at work I speak in front of usually groups of 24 to 30 people on a daily basis, 2, 3, 4 times a day, and it doesn't faze me in the least. And I feel frozen right now with fear. But anyway, I'm honored that Hillary and Amanda asked me to speak tonight. And again, my name is Paula. I'm a family therapist over at Men's Addiction Treatment Center, High Point, and also in recovery. I'm here to talk about my son. My son's name was Curtis Lincoln Hendricks II. And I lost him in 2007. And sometimes so many times it feels like yesterday or 10 minutes ago. It's grief is a many-layered, crazy thing, and it just comes in waves, comes and goes in waves. And you talk about the 5 stages of grief. I hear you every day. You go through all of them. One of the last things Curtis said to me, we were arguing because he wanted me to cash his check. And I got really scared because I knew what that meant. He had money. It was like in the evening, the banks were closed, and I said, no, I'm not going to cash a check. Come on, Ma, I said, Curtis, no, I'm not cashing your check. I'm not giving you cash. If you need something, I'll get it for you. I'll buy you cigarettes. I'll buy you food, but I'm not giving you cash. Ma, don't worry about it. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to die. Those were the last words I ever heard him say. The very last words I heard him say to me. Don't worry, Ma, I'm not going to die. And the guilt and the pain and, what should I have done differently? Like, I didn't spend enough time. I remember one time he told me I'm so bored. And I was so exhausted. I was working so much. It's always working. I was so exhausted. Why didn't I take more time? Was it because I was in active addiction when he was a young child? Was that it? The guilt and the shame and why did this have to happen? It's endless. It's endless. He was such a beautiful young person. He was my best friend. He always watched out for me. On Thanksgiving, my other children had plans to go other places, and he goes, Ma, what are you doing on Thanksgiving? And I said, well, everyone's going someplace, so I think I'm going to hit all the meetings, maybe do the soup kitchen or the shelters or something. I said, that's a nice thing to do on Thanksgiving. He said, oh no, he went around to the whole family and said, everyone's at Ma's house tomorrow. Cancel all your plans. He made everyone cancel their plans. He went out and bought this huge bag of apples, and because he loved my apple pies. And the crust of my pies, I always cut out the middle instead of a circle. I'd cut out a little heart and I'd put it on one side, and he'd always fight for that piece. The pie never got made, because it was just a couple days before Thanksgiving that he left us. And my whole family sat at my house on Thanksgiving Day just looking at each other. I think we had baked beans or something, some scrambled eggs. I don't know, we had something. But when Curtis was, he was living with me for a while, off and on. He would come and stay with me, as an adult, and he was 26 when he left us. So he was staying with me for a while, and he came out. I came down into the kitchen for my morning cup of coffee, and he goes, "Ma, here," and he holds out his hand, and I said, he put a key in my hand, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm sorry, Ma, I relapsed, and I know I can't be around you. So here's the key. I promise I'll call you every day and let you know I'm okay." That's the kind of kid he was. You know, he knew he couldn't be around, but he was going to let me know he was okay. And he told the truth. He didn't steal from me, you know. I know there's always those yets out there, but that's who he was. That's who he was. I remember, sitting, writing his obituary. I was... Back in 2007, there was so many people the stigma was still so huge, and there was so many people in the closet. There was so many people not willing to talk about it. You never, ever saw in the obituaries that someone died fighting a battle of addiction. It was always, he died unexpectedly, and I just couldn't have that. I was so sick and tired of it, and you can look in the past years. I think it was one of the first obituaries that said my son died fighting an excruciating battle with the beast of addiction, at his wake. And there was people that came to his wake that I never met before. At the wake, they're usually 4 to 7 or 4 to 8. It was going on 9:30, 10 o'clock, and there was still lines outside the door. Just people in recovery that were coming and saying thank you. I met him. I was in the courthouse one day, this young woman said, "I was in the courthouse one day and I met your son. He didn't even know me, but he saw me standing there really scared. And he put his arms around me. He said, 'Look, it's going to be okay.'" And it was. And I knew when he said it, it was going to be okay. This was the kind of things people were coming up and saying to me. He was just amazing. And the loss never goes away, and the grief never goes away. I was working in the field long before. I have several children afflicted with the disease of addiction, as myself. And I was in the field for a long time before, and they used to come to some of the meetings with me, some of the open speaker meetings. They used to call it the donut meetings because this one gentleman used to bring in tons of donuts for everybody, and the kids would be running around. It was usually a Sunday when the meeting started later, and families were welcome. And it was so they knew about addiction, they knew about meetings, they knew about everything, but it didn't stop them. It didn't stop Curtis. It didn't stop. It didn't teach them not to pick up. My experience didn't keep them from having their own experience in addiction. And it's so frustrating, because now we see so many things at an early age, and we try and redirect our kids and redirect young people in prevention and try and teach them about addiction and where it's going to take them. It's definitely going to take them someplace bad. It's always someplace bad. But they have to it's up to every individual what they want to do with it. I left my profession. I had been working at several different places, High Point, Gosnold. I managed a women's transitional house back when women were sent to Framingham, and instead of the Women's Addiction Treatment Center. And I was started working with the parole boards, getting women out of jail. They didn't belong in jail; they belonged in treatment, you know. So, and I loved what I was doing. But after I lost Curtis, the ground went out from underneath me. I just didn't feel like I had a voice anymore. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't even understand why cars were still driving up and down the roads. It was like, what's everyone doing, you know? But I worked in my family's greenhouse for a year, and I put my hands in the dirt, and I just kept busy. And about a year later, I needed to get a real job again. I needed to go back to work, and I didn't know what to do. And I kept on getting these signs from High Point, you know, like I'd go on all the various Google things, you know, work, job. I can't even think of the names of them, but you know what I mean. And this High Point kept coming up, and I'm thinking, can I do it? Can I do it again? But there was just all these signs that made me want to give it a try again. So I did. I interviewed at High Point, and they made me do some role play because at Gosnell I was working as a counselor, and I had begun working with families. So I did. It was an interesting interview. You know, I've never heard of role play at an interview, but so it was pretty interesting. And so I got right into it. Yeah, Academy Award. And they said, I really want you to work with families. And I said, I would love to. So they hired me. They had me come on board and put me on my 3-month probation period, and I went directly to my supervisor and I told her about my son, Curtis. And this happened to be, lo and behold, the Men's Addiction Treatment Center. So here I am working in, you know, substance abuse and recovery with all men. And here's my son. You know, is that going to get in my way? Transference, countertransference, this and that, all this stuff is going through my head. So I went to my supervisor and I said, I don't know if I can do this. I'd like to give it a try. And I told her my story, and I asked her to watch me, and we had a lot of supervision, like a couple times a week for, you know, the first year, I think. And it was great. It was great. It worked. I was able to do it. You know, I didn't look at these gentlemen and see my son or have feelings about my son and decide what they should be doing. I mean, it didn't happen that way. I was able to get right into neutral territory, and I started working with families and these gentlemen and their families, and absolutely just loved it. And, you know, I get up every morning, and I know they tell you when you're in this field and you're licensed and, you know, professional, that, you know, you shouldn't talk to people about your personal identification and stuff like that. But I think sometimes there's a call for it, you know? I just really do. And it's not like I get up and tell my whole story because it'd probably make their hair curl. This little old lady getting up there. I think I'm the oldest one at High Point. No, seriously, I think I am. And, you know, Miss Press and everything get up. If I told them any of my stories, they'd be, you know, they really would. But, you know, sometimes I hear the despair, and I'm probably just going to go use again, or, you know, like that kind of a thing. And, you know, and so many of these beautiful gentlemen that walk in the doors, so broken. Whew. And they've lost so many people. They've lost their best friend. I woke up, my girlfriend was dead next to me. I mean, I all day long, I hear these stories and whew, you just feel it. And I understand that pain. And I want to tell them that they can do it too. You know, like you don't have to pick up because you're in pain. Pain is part of being a human being. Pain is being human. Pain is part of life. And you have to learn how to feel all these things, feel all of it. Because if you don't feel it all, then you're stuffing it somewhere. You have to feel it. I get up every morning, and I'm a few minutes late a lot, but I do the best I can. But no matter what's going on, I have to say a little prayer. I have to meditate for a few minutes and say a prayer. My higher power is Creator, my Creator. And I talk to my boy, my Curtis, and I say, Curtis, how can I honor you today? And I hear his little wannabe gangster voice, get up, Ma, get going. Get up, Ma, get going, you know. And I get up and I get going. And it keeps me going, you know. And he inspires me to keep going in spite of the pain. Sometimes I'm driving home from work, and Curtis was in the hospital for 4 days before we finally took him off the respirator, in hopes that maybe there would be some brain activity, some miracle, something after his overdose, and there wasn't. But sometimes I'm rushing home, and for a quick second I'm like, I gotta get to the hospital, like, and then oh my God, where did it come from? You know, like it doesn't ever leave you. It doesn't leave you. It comes and goes. People ask me to. I got kind of swarmed afterwards about grief groups. Let me tell you, I was so angry. A grief group was the last place I wanted to be at. This is me, okay? This is the way I felt. I didn't want to hear about anybody else's grief. I just wanted to envelop my boy and what I was feeling with him. And it's okay to feel that way if there's anyone out there that feels the same way. It's really okay not to jump into things like that. Give yourself as much time as you need, because I think it was close to 2 years before I finally went to a grief group. I think it was something Amanda brought me to somewhere north of Boston. And it took 2 years for me to finally like open up and hear other people's pain and share my own. And it began to become helpful. But it took me 2 years. I didn't want any part of any of that. So I get up and I honor my boy every single day. And I get going, and I see all these gentlemen coming in, and they're just amazing. They're amazing, and their families are so scared and so broken. They're scared to death. And I love working with them. I love pulling them into a room together. I pull together these family sessions where I pull the client and his family. And family doesn't have to be bio family. It can be anybody that supports you, physically, financially, emotionally, whatever, that person that you go to out there. And we bring them in and we talk about, the ongoing plan and what are you afraid of? What obstacles do you see? And I teach them, I help to educate them about the disease and about how not to take it personally. But a lot of family, that he did this to me, he stole my this. No, he didn't. He didn't want to go, he didn't want to be dope sick. Do you know what that feels like? And I let him know what it feels like. I tell them in detail what it feels like. And he was going to pawn it, put it right back, get himself straight, and he was going to get everything together again and then bring that back to you. That's what really was going on. And most of the time, that really is what's going on. And families like open their eyes and they take a second look and they give their loved one another chance. And it's like, it just opens my heart to see, a better understanding. And I think it's just what we all need. And I just love doing it. I love being a part of opening people's hearts and letting them know what addiction really is. That drug dealer that you're mad at, that you want to kill because, he sold dope to your daughter or your son or your cousin or your husband or whatever. That dope dealer is probably just another person that's addicted, that's trying to sell something to get something for himself, so he's not dope sick or she's not. It's just like this big, insidious circle. It's a beast. It's a multi-layered beast of an illness, and if we could wipe out the judgment and get more knowledge of it and embrace each other, and addiction, the opposite of addiction is connection. I heard someone say that, and I say that a lot. The opposite of addiction is connection. We need to talk to each other. We need to hold each other up. We need more voices talking about that pain and letting people know what it feels like and know that we understand. And reach out and hold each other up through all of this. I can't thank you enough for asking me to speak and share part of my story and talk about my boy. Because he's with me here. He's here with us. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Laura O'Brien, and before I explain a little bit about my organization, I just want to say that it's an honor and a privilege to be here for the third year in a row. All of the hard work that High Point puts in to put this event together is amazing, and to share the podium with the bravery that we just witnessed is truly an honor and a privilege. So as I said, my name is Laura O'Brien, and I am the coordinator of the Bridging Lives Substance Use Prevention and Harm Reduction Coalition, serving Bridgewater and Rainham. For those of you that live in these two communities, please know that we are a resource to students, families, and the community at large. Our coalition is working to promote the message that honesty saves lives in an effort to encourage people to call 911 in the event of an emergency, but also as a way to combat the stigma of substance use. We tell our students that good kids make bad decisions all the time. It's part of growing up. But we also say that there's not a parent on the planet who wouldn't rather get a phone call saying, "I'm really sorry, I screwed up and I'm in an unsafe situation," than a knock on the door from the local police department saying, "Your child didn't make it." If you would like to know more about our coalition, please find us at our resource table here tonight. It is now my pleasure to introduce Vicki Lynch and Carlos V. Ramos, who are performing this evening. Vicki has been sharing her healing power of music for the past 10 vigils, and we are so grateful to have Carlos joining her this evening as well. Please give a warm welcome to Vicki and Carlos.
Thank you. When you feel you're alone, cut off from this cruel world, your instincts telling you to run. Listen
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabby Sullivan, and I am the Grants Manager for High Point Treatment Center and the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative. Tonight, we not only remember those we've lost to the relentless disease of addiction, but we also draw strength from the stories of recovery that illuminate the path towards hope and healing. As we continue through this evening of reflection and remembrance, we are honored to welcome our next speaker, Graham Correa, who will share his story of addiction, resiliency, and recovery. Please welcome Graham.
Thank you, Gabby. You guys hear me okay? Thank you guys so much for sharing your story. I'm completely humbled and I'm grateful to be here. So my name's Graham Correa. I'm a grateful recovering drug addict. I am super nervous right now. Usually I'm not, but I think that's probably a good thing. So I grew up in Rochester, Massachusetts on a beautiful 13-acre horse farm, great family, great friends, community around me. And I remember 12 years old, about 12 and a half, my parents left me alone in the house, and I got an eye on a big jug of wine, Portuguese jug of wine. And I remember thinking, everybody seems to have a really good time when they're drinking that. So no one was home, and I grabbed one of those little plastic cups. Just a little pink wine in a plastic cup, and I had one, I drank another one. And then I had a third one, and I was running around the house with a little basketball, dunking it on the hoop that's on the doors inside the house. It seemed like everything that I had problems with, that thing inside that made me uncomfortable, went away completely in those 2 to 3 hours, followed by a headache and throwing up. But it didn't matter because I had found what I thought was a solution to my problems. I'm not going to go into between 12 and 42. It was a mess, I promise. But I will fast forward to 42, November 4th of 2021, walking out of a crack house with no shirt on, ripped jeans, walking down the streets of Fall River. And thankfully there was a man taking out his trash. And he said, "Sit down on the wall, you're not doing well." So I got an ambulance, had my parents come to the hospital and pick their son up. The day before, I had got a phone call from my, at the time, wife, a phone call that I am super grateful for at this point, saying that our marriage was over. And she had spent a long time sticking around, watching me alienate her and everyone else in my family and lying to everyone. So I tried to end my life that night. And my plan was to smoke as much crack as I could to give myself a heart attack. So I spent about $1,000 that night. I lost my job, 6-figure salary, lost my family, and lost a lot of my friends that weren't talking to me anymore. So I finally had to make a decision to do this. And I had tried to do this before, and I say tried, but I really wasn't in it. I went to treatment, saw therapy, took medication, 12 steps, sponsor. And this time I knew that because I didn't have anything left, it was just me. So I woke up the next morning after my dad sat next to me and held my hand all night because he was afraid I was going to call my dealer and have him pick me up. I called a friend who lived in Maine, and he was an old personal trainer. And he asked me one question. He said, "Why aren't you running?" So I used to be an ultramarathon runner, so I'd run 50-mile races, 100-mile races. And I said, "Well, I can't. I lost my soul. I lost that drive." And he said, "I think you need to run, but I think you really need to run like you used to run." So I took it into consideration. I called my best friend from childhood in Colorado. He lived on the edge of the Rockies in Colorado Springs. And I said, his name is Keeler. I asked him, "Is there any way that I could come stay with you? Because I need to leave this area, people, places, and things." He said, "I kind of live like a hermit on the edge of the Rockies, but you're welcome to my awful green couch." So I said, okay. So about 4 months before that, I had planned a vacation that I couldn't make because I was too screwed up and hungover to actually go to Mexico. Wouldn't have been a good idea anyway. But I had a JetBlue credit from that. The JetBlue credit was for $350. The flight from Boston to Denver that day was $346. So that was my first sign that this is something that I need to do, and I need to trust God. That is my higher power, in the direction that He's going to take me. So 7 hours later, I was on a plane. Weirdly enough, on the plane, there was about 16 passengers. And I had the whole back to myself, and I had my head against the window looking outside, going over Detroit and Chicago, and in tears, knowing that I had pretty much lost everything that I had. I got to Colorado with a duffel bag and $40. Keeler picked me up at the airport, brought me to his house. I slept on the green couch. I got a job at a deli. I am an electrician. I had a job working in Boston, making $180,000 a year. None of that mattered because I had nothing left. I wanted to humble myself, so I got a job at a deli, started going to meetings out there, and started to run 15 to 20 miles a day in the Rockies. After about 3 weeks of doing that, I was sitting on the edge of the Rockies. I was actually meditating, and I was looking out at the plains where it's all flat. And for the first time in my life, I heard a voice, very small whisper, just say, "Run home." So I got there on November 4th, 2021. January 1st, 2022, I had a backpack on, got dropped off at Union Station in Denver, and I ran 40 miles a day through the winter back to Massachusetts for 72 days. And the reason that I did that was to get that part of myself I lost a long time ago back. It was the hardest thing I ever done. I had articles written about me, calling me a crackhead, child abandoned father. And that was all meant for me to see and hear, because those things were true. I had lied to everybody. I had ruined my family. I had told stories about my family that weren't true about wonderful people. And I needed to hear that for moving forward. But during that run, a lot of things happened. A lot of blisters, a lot of painful moments. But I got a relationship with God. You can't really not get one when you're trusting that you can't get up in the morning to walk, but you have to run another 40 miles to get to the next hotel, because I didn't have a crew. It was just me and God. But this amazing thing happened with the community back home. People knew I had no money to do this. So I would get a message on Facebook saying, "Listen, I've booked you a hotel in this town if you can make it there." I never had to pay for a hotel or food the entire time. And the community that came together during that, I could have never imagined. I ran for the Heron Project to raise money and awareness for this disease. And while I was running, I found purpose. And that's really why I want to talk tonight, is purpose. In all the treatment centers and all the programs I went in, I had such an incredible amount of tools that I learned during that. Meditation, prayer, yoga, writing my 4th step, speaking my 5th step, amends process, therapy, medication at the time. And there were a lot of wonderful tools, and I still have those wonderful tools. But I realized as I was running out there that you can have a large toolbox, but you need to know what you're building. And my biggest question that I didn't get asked at any of these places was, what's your purpose? What is your purpose? Because without that, I was always just kind of going through the motions. And I would stay sober for a long time, but I would also stay very miserable for a long time. And so when I started getting purpose, it was sometime in Virginia. I hadn't spoken to my daughter. She hadn't spoken to me, rightfully so. She needed time away from me because of the havoc that I had caused. And I didn't know if this run was going to do anything for me. I didn't know what people were thinking that were in my family. I spoke with my parents, but that was about it. And I was on mile 26 on a very cold day running through West Virginia. And my plan was to run 35 miles that day. And I got a message from my daughter, a picture of her and her best friend touring my old college to see where she wanted to go to school. And I called her and I spoke with her. That was the first time I had heard from her since, I think, November, when all of this stuff came out and she had to move on and do her own thing. That gave me my first glimmer of my purpose. One of my purposeful things is my kids, and my daughter is sitting over there today with me here today. And I am so incredibly grateful of that, because 2 years ago, I was almost dead. And she was moving on from me because she didn't want to be a part of a father that was going to die. So I got home, and it was difficult for me, as you can imagine. I was running 40 miles a day, and then I had to stop because my body was so damaged. But I had a spiritual connection that I'd never had before. But I still had to learn how to do this after I did that. And that's where the difficulty came in. I had my moments. I had difficult times that I had to work through, and that's where community came in, and the phone calls were made to my sponsor, going to meetings, calling people that I knew were there for me during the run, and they said they'd always be there. I do run again now, and I'm back on my feet doing that, but I needed a lot of time to work through things, and purpose helped me. Being with my children helped me. Knowing that I want to help kids in high school and help get this message out there, that is my purpose at this point. And that allows me to use the tools and know what I'm building. So today I'm humbled to be here. I'm incredibly grateful to be here. And I know that going forward, it's going to be very hard. I lost a lot of friends to this. And I know that there's a lot of you out here who have lost a son or a daughter, brother, sister, friend. I promise that they love you, and they loved you so much. I promise that they had thoughts and visions of a different life going forward. They are sitting right next to you. I know what I thought when I was using, not being able to pull myself out of it. It wasn't lack of love. I loved my parents so much, and they loved you so much. And they are right here today. And they are smiling, I promise. So thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate this. And again, I am so incredibly humbled to be here. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Robichaud, and I'm a member of the Women Hanson Will Coalition. I'm also the sister of Julie Scott, one of the beautiful individuals you'll see here tonight pictured in the slideshow. I want to say thank you to all of the courageous and dedicated people who spoke tonight. Since the inception of this program, the Collaborative has collected photographs from the region in order to commemorate those we have lost to this horrible disease of addiction. This video slideshow is not only meant to recognize these individuals taken from us too soon, but is also intended to help remove the stigma associated with substance use disorders. With the loss of these individuals, many family, friends, coworkers, community members, and those in recovery community are impacted. We have been deprived of the many contributions that they would have continued to give to us in this world. This is evident by the number of people gathered here tonight. When this slideshow originally played 10 years ago in 2013, there were 22 photographs that played to one single song. Today, on August 29th, 2023, the video slideshow portrays a series of 438 beautiful and hopeful pictures. While the increase in photographs unfortunately means a rise in the number of people dying, It also represents the courage of families to share their stories of their loved ones without shame or fear of being part of the stigma. Our hope is not for you to leave with your heart more broken or your shoulder heavier with the burden of loss, but that you see this vigil as living, breathing representation that we can change the outcome. Our hope is that in the future, we will see a decrease in the number of photographs added to the slideshow. Our hope is that as a community, we realize that our words, actions, and thoughts have a powerful impact, and that we can stop this epidemic. We will continue to persevere in the name of the loved ones that we have lost, with the hope from those in recovery and the ones still suffering. Addiction steals some of the most beautiful souls. It's a hard road for all of us to go down, whether we're in the addiction ourselves or watching those we love suffer. But difficult roads lead to beautiful destinations. And through this difficult road everyone here has been on, in one way or another, we've all ended up here at this beautiful destination of love, hope, and support. No matter how dark the night may get, your light, these lights, will never burn out. On behalf of the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative and our partners, we thank you all for coming.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. My name is Kara Ferguson, and I'm a prevention coordinator with the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative. We have a couple of thank yous to do tonight before we send you all off into the night. First, we'd like to thank Mackenzie Latham for putting together such a, beautiful memorial slideshow. And we would also like to thank each of our three speakers, Graham, Paula, and Nan, for their vulnerability and their graciousness. Sorry, I'm a little choked up. All three of you, it has been such an honor and privilege to have you tonight and to have you share your stories and your lives with us. So just truly thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And also thank you to all of you who are here tonight for taking time out of your night to be with us, to share your loved ones. And I hope that our team did them the honor that they deserve, because truly their legacies are so beautiful. And you know, we have these candles here, which are supposed to symbolize their light that we carry forward with them. But all of their light lives on in all of you. So please don't ever forget that you have the power to illuminate other people's lives, and you can spark so much joy and love. And it's just so beautiful to look out into the crowd and to see all of you. So really, thank you for honoring their legacies, because they would be so proud of you. Before I leave, I would like to invite Vicki Lynch and Carlos V. Ramos back to the stage for one final performance. So just truly thank you all for such a beautiful evening.
Just hang on for a minute, I've got something to say. And I'm not asking you to move on or forget it, but these are better days. To be wrong all along and admit it is not amazing grace, but to be loved like a song you remember even when you change. So tell me, did I go on a tangent? Did I lie through my teeth? Did I cause you to stumble on your feet? Did I bring shame on my family? Did it show when I was weak? But that's what you see. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. Oh, that wasn't me. When you're lost, you will toss every lucky coin you'll ever trust, and you'll hide from your God like he ever turned his back on us, and you'll fall all the way to the bottom and land on your own knife. But you'll love who you are, even if it doesn't take your life. So tell me, did I go on a tangent? Did I lie through my teeth? Did I cause you to stumble on your feet? Did I bring shame on my family? Did it show when I was weak? If that's what you see, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. Oh, that wasn't me. But I want you to know that you'll never be alone. Ooh, I wanted that's what you see. That will be me.